Well, welcome, Earth-based students. I wanted to put together a presentation for you on how to make rock candy. It's something that is commonly done, good for elementary level activities, and it's a very nice parallel to what actually goes on in nature. It mimics the creation of various minerals and rocks, igneous rocks as they cool from a magma. Sedimentary rocks as for instance seawater evaporates, but certainly minerals. It fits with any of those topics. Now you'll have to pay attention to what your district's policy on heat in the classroom is. Some districts allow it, some districts do not, some districts have a modified policy. If you end up in a district that does not allow it, you're not out of luck. You can still prepare the elements that you're going to use outside of the classroom and then bring them into the classroom once they've cooled to the point where they're just warm, and it will still work just fine. So I'll point out those steps as we go through this. So to start out with, this handout is on Moodle. Okay, this is a page explaining rock candy chemistry, and this is the how-tos of it on this side. And so to start off with, we're going to take a string. I've got some dedicated cotton string here, nothing fancy about this, and we're going to seed it with sugar crystals. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some sugar water started here, and what we have is 1/8 of a cup of water. Okay, so that goes in, and then 1/2 cup of sugar. That goes in. You really want to try not to spill any sugar on the hot plate because it really stinks when it burns. I just did a little bit, but it's not too bad. So then we're going to heat that up until the sugar dissolves in there. And then we're going to take this string, just cut off a piece there, and we're going to seed it. And again, this is also parallel with what goes on in nature. It is common to find rocks that fall into a magma chamber, or existing crystals that new crystals then form around and enlarge. So this is, again, a very good parallel of what goes on in nature. We're going to provide those seed crystals by embedding them in this string. And so the first thing that we've done is we're heating up this sugar water. Okay, and I'm just going to put the string right in it. And we're going to let that come to a boil. And then I'll pull the string out, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. So I'm going to pause the video right now because you don't need to wait for sugar water to come to a boil. Okay, I've gotten the sugar water heated to boiling. The string is in it, and I've got it on the edge here. It's kind of hot, so you might want to have a tweezers or something you can grab it with. It's not so hot you can't do it with your fingers, so I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to pull that string out. And next to it here, I have some sugar on some aluminum foil, just sugar spread on it, and I'm just going to draw that string through the sugar, and all I'm trying to do is make sure I get lots of sugar crystals embedded in that string. And yeah, and we'll just let that sit then for a little while, and move on to the next thing. So the next thing we got to do is we've made that seeded string. Now we're going to make the sugar water that we're going to hopefully create crystals from. So we'll put this back on the heat, and I'm just going to use that same bit of water and sugar that I had used to make the seeded string. I'm going to add 1 cup of water as per the directions. Okay, and to that I'm going to add 2 cups of sugar. And I'm going to heat to boiling. So I'm going to stir this up. It's good to keep it stirred, and you want to definitely heat this to boiling, but you don't want to heat it too much. If you heat sugar water too much, it will change the molecular structure of it, and it will no longer crystallize. It will remain a syrup. And so the right amount of heat is what you want, but not too much heat. So you want to heat that up till it's just boiling, and then take it off the heat. Now, before we do that, we're going to add 1/3 cup of sugar, but we want to let this get heated up first before we put that in. That's what the directions will say. And so while that's happening, the seeded string is cooling and hardening, and I'm going to pause the video again and just let that come to a boil. And I'll probably add the third cup of sugar while we're waiting for things to come before I start the video up again, because you don't need to see me pour a cup of sugar in and wait for it to heat again. You can kind of get that connection. Okay, so one more pause and we'll be back. Okay, so we're back. I've heated that sugar water, all 3 cups. I added the third cup, and I've heated it to boiling. It's just starting to roll in there, and again, you don't want to heat it too much. So I've got my my trusty UGG gloves here, and we're going to take that off, and that's what we're going to hopefully crystallize some sugar crystals from that solution. We're going to have evaporate off the water and some of the water, and as this solution, as this liquid here loses water, the sugar crystals will want to come out of solution and crystallize. They'll want to harden because the volume of water that's there is now cooler, which means it can't hold as much dissolved material. And also will lose some water, will evaporate away, which means it will again lose its ability to have as much stuff dissolved in it. Now, so I've got the seated string here, and I've got a lid. You can use a drinking glass with a piece of cardboard on the top. You don't have to have fancy stuff like this. This isn't fancy. All I did is drill 2 holes on top of a lid. So what you want to do is you want to take your seated string and feed it through one of those holes and tie a knot in it so that it can't pull back through the hole. Okay, and then loop the other side around and through the hole so it can't pull back through. Like that. Okay. Then lick your fingers. No, don't do that. You're not supposed to do this. Probably. I'm not supposed to do much of anything anymore. So you can write that in my course evaluations. I model badness. Okay, so we've got a string here, then with a loop on it, and what I want you to do then is just simply cut the loop, and now the strings will form 2 separate pieces of rock candy, so you can have 2 kids working with one. Now you want to check this. You want to make sure that the strings don't go all the way to the bottom of the jar. If they do, the crystals that will form in the bottom of the jar will latch onto that seed string, and you won't be able to pull it out. In fact, I'm going to shorten it out. I want at least a ½ inch off the bottom, so I'm going to shorten it just a little bit. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we're going to go with that length. Maybe that's a little bit short, but in that ballpark. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our sugar water here. You can see it's starting to clear up. That's what we want, clear. But you know, that's kind of a boring tan color. So let's spice it up just a little bit, okay? So we got some... Wait a second. This is for Viking fans. I'm a Packer fan. Ta-da! Okay. So we'll put some of this in there. And stir it around a little bit. Oh, look at that pretty green color. Wow. Yeah, that's a good color. And then, well, let's spice it up a little bit more. Since we got a nice color, how about we go with another flavor? Now, if I'm a Packer fan, you know, meat flavor is probably not the best, which is what the Packers are named after, right? So green seems like it got to go with mint, right? Honestly, you can put whatever you want in there. You can put orange, you can put pumpernickel, whatever you want to put in there. Just be a little careful when you put food coloring in hot liquid. Remember, this food coloring is 90% alcohol. Well, it varies depending on the kind. So you can get a little flash from it, so you want to be careful of that. I put about a cap in. You saw it flare up and bubble there just a little bit as the alcohol quickly evaporated off. Okay, woo, that smells up the room nice. Okay, so there, I'll mix that in. And our solution is ready to cool. So what I'm going to do now is pour it in a jar. Now, normally in this class we would have 2 jars, and that would be enough to about 3/4 fill 2 jars of this size. Since I'm doing this as a demo, I'm just going to fill this jar right to the top. You just kind of pre-measure this beforehand to know how much sugar water you're going to make and what kind of jar that you can use to create the sugar crystals in. There we go. Okay, now, real important point. Oh, two. One less important, one more important. I think I could have made those strings a little bit longer. They're a little bit short. That's okay. You can make them a little longer. Don't put the seeded strings directly in the hot sugar water. If you do that, all the crystals you got embedded in that string will dissolve and all that work will have been for naught. You want to let this cool to just above room temperature for an hour or two and then put the cap in. And you don't want to crank the cap down tight, just maybe on there loosely a turn or two. Not so loose that somebody picks it up and it falls off and they drop the jar, but enough so that water can evaporate and heat can escape from there once you put the lid on. At any rate, once you're done with that, our goal, as I talked about earlier, is to create these crystals of rock candy. Perfect analogs, perfect models of what goes on in nature. If I could do that over here where it's not in front of the board. Okay. Now, you can use string. I know my face isn't always all in the picture. That's okay. You don't need to see that. You can also use a piece of wood like this skewer or a chopstick. Something of that sort will work also. And it's a little harder to seed it. You might want to roughen it up. You might try even not seeding it. It might take a little while longer to get it done. But you set this aside. Now this is going to take a couple of days before you get crystals forming really well. So it'll require some patience, which is not in great supply in this day and age. But that will eventually give you crystals. It's a good model for what goes on in nature, and your kids can eat it. How perfect is that? All right, this video will be on Moodle along with the instruction sheet there, and I hope you enjoy it and make use of it. Thank you.